我々は技術会社である限りは技術をもって人間に奉仕する。技術というのは人間のためにあるんだ。
ここで先生にお伺いしたいのは、インダストリー 4.0 が COVID-19 このコロナ禍の中で社会にもたらしたポジティブな影響というものはどういったものがあるかというところからお話をいただきたいというふうに思います。
Yeah, thank you, Mara-san. It's a nice fit. Beginning of, let's say, beginning of this year, our government decided, pressured by the Social Democrats, to set up an additional, process in order to find out how we can protect our car industry, our automotive industry, which is challenged not only by alternative drives and fuels and digitization, but also by the pandemic. And by accident, yesterday evening, there was a event I participated where our chancellor, 6 ministers, and the representatives of our car industry met for the fourth time. There was a big debate some time ago if we can continue to drive the so-called Green Deal as promised by the European Union, despite the challenges by the pandemic, and most of our citizens and business leaders feel that's the case. On the other side, there is a challenge, might be you have heard it, that the European Commission tries to even ask for higher CO2 emission targets for the automotive industry, which is extremely challenging now, where companies don't earn that much money to reinvest into new technologies. That is the debate we have, and the government has, beside other measures, allocated 2 billion euro for initiatives like Industry 4.0 in order to secure the competitiveness of the sector. Let me finish in saying that I read an article in a German newspaper 2 days ago where they said that Honda has or will receive a prize called German Car of the Year 2021 for the e-Honda car. So congratulations if that is true. Let me just add one thing, also which is important in Germany, the unions, so the representatives of the employees are sitting at the table. So the German government always invites the CEO and the top representative of the employees. I think that's very important because that means that they try to get, let's say, harmony between the requests from the enterprises and the employees. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
社会の仕組みを設計して実際に実行に移して、社会を変革させていくという取り組みというのはこのカガマン博士の取り組みが世界で一番早かったというように捉えています。
That's a little bit too nice to me. I think I was chairing a group of 2 or 3 experts coming up with a proposal. And I was also later on the chairman of all the project groups, let's say, to come up with recommendations for Industry 4.0, smart services, etc. So you have to consider you need a lot of experts in order to flesh these out. So when we had the first idea, I reached out to Bosch, to Mr. Dice, and asked him if we could both join this project team, and then we assembled 40 people from science, from business, etc. So this is usually, let's say, a work of a group of people, and I was lucky enough to initiate and to some extent be the leader of these groups all the time and present it to our chancellor. Yeah. And you have to consider, I'm, let's say, coming from the IT application area, and if you come up with those ideas, you have also to convince all your colleagues in science from academia who are working in production, engineering, etc. So it's quite interesting if you, as a software developer or of a leader of a software company, go to all these experts from production and promote those things. So from that point of view, you can understand that you have to collect and assemble a lot of experts from different fields in order to get these things going.
インダストリー 4.0 のハイライトの一つとして標準化が挙げられると思います。共通のルールをまとめるのは国や組織の大小にかかわらずとても大変な試みだとは思うんですが、ドイツではこの大変な試みを進められるような素地や土壌がもともとあったのでしょうか。またなぜ進めることができたのでしょうか。
It's a good question, and let me start not with Industry 4.0 but with the car industry. I mentioned that I was also appointed 2010 at the same time as the chairman of our national platform Electric Vehicles. And in this group, 160 people, we had a separate working group of standards because it was so obvious that you needed standards, because if you drive with an electric car, you know, if you come to a charging station, you know this as good as I know, that it doesn't matter if you are in Germany, France, Italy, wherever you are. At least in Europe, it should have been standardized. And there was a lot of push to get these forward, and we had to create for the first time a cooperation between industries that never ever worked before on standards. That is the car industry and the utilities. And from that point of view, there was already a certain, I would say, experience at least for a year or so, and that worked very, very well. I think we did a good job there, and I believe that has helped us, that the acceptance for Industry 4.0 1 or 2 years later was pretty high. It works in a way that these working groups, this is mostly people from business, they start coming with recommendations, what has to be standardized, then it goes to the German bodies go to the European bodies, and then they go to the international bodies. It's this cascading. And in parallel, what helps is that all these recommendations we usually are able to give to a high governmental official, so that people feel there is response from the government, and if necessary, governments helps behind the scenes if it gets very important, let's say on a high level, to talk to other countries. So, and my final point is if you look to Industry 4.0, one of the key topics is plug and produce. That means that you need so-called semantic interoperability between machines of different vendors, and that is only possible if you have global standards.
はい、ありがとうございます。 はい、進められた理由についてですね、ありがとうございました。では、ここからは顧客ニーズの重要性を高めるという観点での質問になります。
社会設計をしている稲垣から質問させていただきます。私が知っているインダストリー 4.0 の成功例としてアディダス、シューズメーカーアディダスのスピードファクトリーがあると考えています。スピードファクトリーによって新興国から母国ドイツに工場を移し、そのリードタイムを短縮し、そして輸送費を削減し、さらには顧客のニーズに応えるといったことを可能にしたというところから私は非常に感動しました。そこで質問ですが、例えば自動車産業のような、重厚長大な産業においても同様の効果といったものが得られるのでしょうか。またそのような実例があればお教え願いますか。
Yeah, I think best is from my point of view. If you look to the car industry, I would point might be to the newest factory of Daimler, because that was just announced, and they have highlighted that they have implemented a lot of the Industry 4.0 concepts. It starts with 5G. You remember that at the very beginning, because of low latency, it was requested that we come into the millisecond area, and with 5G you can do it. It was shown in Hanover 2 years ago. That's one point. Another point was that they referred to Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, but also driverless transport systems. I think intralogistics driverless helps them to shift in steps, not immediately, but in steps from these, I think, traditional rigid factory production lines to more flexible production cells, which is known that's there. And interesting for me, they reported to a project which was one of the first in Industry 4.0, and that is the, let's say, very flexible capacity management of workers. So to combine the flexibility needs of the company if additional demand comes in for, let's say, additional hours or additional shift, with the, I would say, flexibility needs of modern citizens who have to take care sometimes for their parents in times of care, or they get children, so that there is a try to, let's say, use this flexibility to the benefit of both sides. That was one of the very early projects in Industry 4.0, but it never took off, and surprisingly I read recently that they tried partially to introduce this as well, which is very promising. And let me finish in saying that most examples I know are more brownfield approaches where companies, larger companies, try to upgrade existing factories by equipping them with sensor technology, some IoT, etc., in order to leverage the benefits of the digital transformation. There are a few cases I know where companies have taken a greenfield approach, so creating smaller, I would say, showcase factories completely designed to Industry 4.0, and there I have to say the productivity improvements and the time to market has significantly improved, significantly. Certainly 40–50%, significant. And obviously they are concerned to make it too public, because in one case it's a very small factory, but they reduced, let's say, what they did normally with 12 people, they could do with 3. And you can imagine that that is not something which they want to make too much, too popular, because then other concerns pop up there. Final example, I think we can take the time. There is what I like very much is that was a joint, very small effort between the consulting subsidiary of Porsche, the Munich Re as a reinsurance company, KUKA, and a few others, and they implemented a very setup for smart factory as a service, which I liked because it was combining contract manufacturing with the capabilities of a reinsurance company to, let's say, collect so much data that they feel they are able to guarantee a certain productivity level. So they would step in if the productivity goes below, let's say, 80 or 90%, and pay the money, let's say, for the gap, just because they believe they can learn from all the data in order to guarantee this. And I like this very much.
今実例の中でも労働者の働き方というお話が出てまいりましたので、少し人に焦点を当てた質問をさせていただきたいというふうに思います。じゃあ坪口の方から質問をさせていただきます。
人事領域を担当しています。坪口と言います。産業構造が大きく変わる中、インダストリー 4.0 で研究されているエンプロイアビリティというのは非常に重要なものと捉えています。なぜインダストリー 4.0 で目指す姿に人の視点を重視し、エンプロイアビリティをトッププライオリティに置いたのかを教えてください。
I think human factor in the center was there from the beginning. The topic of employability was not there at the very beginning in 2011, but it popped up when we found out that in particular through more artificial intelligence on autonomous systems, there started a public debate on how much work will be left, will there be a high level of unemployment, how fast can we upskill people, what will we do with those employees we can't take with us on the new journey, etc. So there were a lot of tough questions that surfaced to the public debate, and that's where we came up with this concept of employability. If you remember, I think, let's say 20, 30 years ago, when I joined SAP, it was like in Japan, normal that people were trying to attract talents by promising that they could have a secure job for their entire life in one company. The second phase was that we all felt that if we pick the right study at university, might be as a mechanical engineer or as an electrical engineer, we will be an electrical engineer our entire life. And that has changed. So the question comes up, how can we combine the desire for job security with the requirement of lifelong learning? And the question is how much responsibility lies at the individual employee, that he has to take time and effort, let's say, to train himself and upskill himself. But on the other side, I felt that we need a kind of a new social contract where a company should also see it as their responsibility to help employees, let's say, to upskill their capabilities beyond what's necessary for the company, so that they keep their employability in the overall market and not just in the company. I think there's a joint, you see my point, yeah? A joint social contract that the employees takes effort for free time, etc., to skill up, but on the other side, feeling that's not 100% for the company, 50% and 50% for myself, something like that.
ありがとうございます。もう一つ質問させてください。企業側に求められる役割の重要性は改めて認識させていただきました。その中で、ホンダも抱えている課題ではあるんですけれども、人とデジタルが共存される中、年齢が高い人、ベテラン層の活躍というのは非常に重要だというふうに思っています。ドイツにおけるこの高齢層に対する問題意識や、取り組み、そういったところがあれば教えてください。
Honestly not. It's more it's a different question. So I think we have a, put it this way. I'm also running within Architect a group of executives being in charge of human resource, let's say from the top companies, around 15 people. The hidden discussion, which is not very popular, is more everybody believes there will be, depending, 15, 20, 25% of the employees where they believe it will not be easy to upskill them in the right way. And the hidden question is how, let's say, to deal best with these problems. That has nothing to do with old or young, but it's just the question of, I would say, the profile of people. That is something which has not surfaced so much in the public debate because the companies are a little bit concerned to bring this up in public. But I know it's behind the scenes a topic because amongst us it is being debated, and we have to see how we tackle this. So it's not young, old, but it's more there are people who are agile or capable enough to change and to adapt, and others who aren't. It's a topic that will come up, I think, soon, and we will see how to deal with that. Not easy. Yeah. Surprisingly, there is a certain percentage of people who like to do every day the same things. That is a little bit surprising to me personally because I get bored if things repeat so often, but it's not true for everybody. And you know that it's in particular replacing routine, manual, and cognitive work. And if you like routine, manual, and cognitive work, then we come into conflict.
今その人というところに対して、ね、やはり先生からお話がありましたので、人観点でもう一つ質問を坪口の方からさせていただきます。
私から専門性のアップデートに関する質問をさせてください。ホンダは一つの専門性を極めることを大切にしてきました。それにより高い品質であったり、独創的な商品を生み出すことができたというふうに考えています。一方で昨日の講演でもありましたが、ソフトスキルを高めるということもまた重要だというふうに伺いました。今後の従業員の能力をどのように高めていくのかということについてご質問をさせてください。
There are two topics. One is that a little bit more difficult that let's say education systems, the public education system has to be changed and take care a little bit more on the soft skills, developing personalities more than let's say factual expertise. That is one direction, which will take longer because it's always more difficult. Internally, from my experience, I think the best is just to challenge people, to trust into their abilities. So sometimes it's not bad to throw people into cold water, different types of cold water, and let them find out what their capabilities are. I'm not personally, but might be I'm wrong, don't get me, but you asked my personal idea. I was never a fan of big seminars in developing personalities. Because it might be my career, I always was challenged and had to learn it myself, but there was trust behind that I could do it, that was better. So I like to be in cold water and try to swim instead of somebody telling me how to swim. Therefore, I might be not the right person to answer this. It might be doesn't fit to everything. Okay.
はい、ありがとうございます。ホンダにもチャレンジ精神という言葉を大切にしているカルチャーがありますので、やはり今そういったチャレンジ精神が重要だということを改めて認識しました。我々の企業活動に参考をさせていただきたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
はい。では インダストリー 4.0 の誕生、発展、そして具体的な事例を分かりやすくご説明いただきましてありがとうございました。我々モビリティカンパニーとしてのそのホンダが求められる顧客との接点、それから自己変革、並びにそれらを支える人材とマネジメントの進化が必要だというふうに理解をいたしました。ここから残り30分ほどですが、少し私たちホンダのモビリティカンパニーというところに焦点を当てたいというふうに思います。大きく4つほどの領域でまた質問者を変えて質問してまいります。昨今物事と言われますが、そのことの領域についてまずお話をさせていただきます。
私からの質問は、インダストリー 4.0 は競争の意味を変えていく存在だと思います。例えば標準化はゴールではなく、新しい価値を創造するためのツールだと感じています。ホンダは製造業として車、バイク、汎用製品を売ってきました。消費のトレンドが物消費からこと消費へと変化する中で、ホンダでは e マウス戦略という電動モビリティによる移動サービスと独自開発のエネルギーサービスをコネクテッド技術などで融合させるものになりますが、それを通して新しい価値を社会に提供しようとしています。インダストリー 4.0 が浸透する今、企業の独自性を人々はどこに見出すと考えますか？
That's a good question because the more we work in an ecosystem, the more there will be a fight which company gets the attention of the consumer. It's the same like with Apple. No? I think it's the Apple brand, but it's produced somewhere else. But people see Apple and don't see the producer behind. That happens in many industries and was a key topic when we discussed smart services. And the question was, will be the future focal point to the consumer, the company that is providing mobility service, or will it be the company that is producing the car? And my biggest concern was all the time that if car companies don't change, they will lose the customer contact and will be just a replaceable, I would say, company, not really valued by the consumer. I think that's your question. And I come to it, but that's a core. If you compare it to the industry I'm coming from the digital industry, I think that's there for decades. I think we always in the IT stack struggled who is seen, and you can adopt different strategies. Think about Intel. There was a slogan, Intel Inside. Nobody has ever seen a chip, but it was more or less the core engine of the user experience and performance, etc. That is one direction you could go. Another one is the question, who is the one in an ecosystem where the customer feels is the final responsibility, this one throat to choke. I know it from the software industry, so at the beginning it were always the big system integrators, but over time in my experience in SAP more and more it shifted to the software companies because there is the experience to help the customer in critical situations. So that's another let's say positioning you could take. I come to the car industry, but let's translate this first. I believe in the car industry, but I'm not from a car industry. But I personally believe that that the car manufacturer over time have to convert into a service company. I strongly believe in mobility as a service, even if it takes 20 or 30 years, and that would mean to transform from a product company more into a service company. The same if now in IT you have cloud productions where it's more or less the same. If you sell software, it's different than providing software as a service. It's completely different. And it's different capabilities, it's a different business model, it's a different culture in a company, etc. And the transformation isn't easy, it takes time. But I strongly believe it's necessary. So I'm a little bit concerned if this model Intel inside would work in the automotive industry. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert, but I'm doubtful, put it this way. I'm doubtful. I think the other way is a better one.
その変化のスピードという観点について、質問させていただきたいというふうに思います。では船戸さんお願いします。ソフトウェア開発をしている船戸から再び質問させていただきます。
ホンダを含めた日本の製造業は古くからアジャイル開発をしてきましたが、組織が大きくなるにつれて今ウォーターフォール型になってきていると感じています。
スピードを取り戻すためには走りながら考えるということが重要だと思っていますが、そのために不可欠なのは、まず一つ目が、個々がエンドトゥエンドで課題に直面するというところ。もう一つがさまざまなデータや財産などを共有することによってコラボレーションに一つの大きなチームとしてより良いものを作ることだと感じています。ところが今組織が大きくなってしまって文化や組織の壁みたいな障壁があり悩んでおります。ドイツでは同様の障壁を感じたことがありますか。またそういう障壁があったときにどのようにそれを解決しますか。
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, I think that's not a Japanese question, that's a global one, because I think it can be seen already in this famous book from Clayton Christensen on the innovator's dilemma, that the successful large companies, I think, to some extent are not able any longer to create good enough products, and therefore, you know the story. We have discussed this in Germany and came up with this idea of what I said yesterday, ambidextrous approach, or you would say a dual strategy or double-handed or whatever you would call it, to combine the benefits of a large scaling, partially waterfall type company with the benefits of agile, small and innovative entities. So that's the reason why most companies are creating these internal incubators where they have protected smaller internal entities with more freedom, with more, I would say, with a different way of working and, important, a different leadership style in combination with the rest of the company. That is a challenge in particular for the executives because they have to, they have to be authentic, but to present or engage themselves in a different way to different communities. And, but it seems to be the only pragmatic way. I can give you a few examples and then might be I stop. If you look back some years, and to some extent the very early product from BMW, the i3, was such a thing where I think a very dedicated separate team developed a completely different car. And you can imagine that I was for many years in the supervisory board, so I know it a little bit. It was only possible with the, with the strong support of the CEO because it cost a lot of money. It was very early. If I look now, I'm in the board of KUKA, which is a robot company, and we are developing, and I'm head of the strategy committee there, a new operating system. It is a small protected group up to the, in all our meetings is the chairman, the CEO, I'm there, etc. And we're protecting this team and developing completely new stuff, very good. High risk, And I can tell you, I get approached even as a board member, supervisory board, not executive, from employees who tell me that's the wrong way. They have 20 years experience, and you know all these things. And to some extent, you need the experience, but they are resistant. And that is a key management challenge. And you have to protect the one for a while, but you have to do it in a way that the others feel that they are still valued, that they need your expertise, etc. But it's a top management requirement to keep these two cultures together and find the right moment when you, let's say, make the new things the mainstream for the entire company. That is the critical moment. And it's more a challenge, I believe, in engineering than in sales or consulting, in particular because you have to combine these long-term experience of the old with the new technology ideas, tools of the young ones coming from universities, and that isn't easy because you cannot afford to do everything from scratch again. This experience is important, but there is resistance because, look, if you work 20 years of your life very successfully in a certain environment and you learn certain things, and out of a sudden people tell you this is wrong, you lose 20 years of effort. And not everybody likes this, and that's understandable and needs a kind of a feeling for engineers. I think I give you maybe finally a personal example or experience. In SAP we had, let's say, if the company is growing, you need a structure which is cost center, departments, people have hundreds of engineers and they take care that at a certain point in time big products are delivered on time and quality to clients. So that is one thing. This is a structure. But in parallel you need what we call deep smarts, so individuals who are architects, who are leaders in thinking. They don't have many people. They don't care from status that they have 1,000 people. They have might be 5 or 10, or they work alone. But they are valued as high as the others in salary and everything. And if you shift, for example, I had to shift to service-oriented architecture in 2003. I collected, in particular, a group of 30 of these architects and deep smarts to convince them and get them on my side that this is the right way to go, because these are people others look to, because they say, look, whatever he's doing, but he's good. and people know who is good in a team. Come on, that is the normal group thing. It's one thing is the status that he is a leader of a big department, but people know amongst engineers who is good. You know my point, and you have to convince those in parallel. So you have to convince both groups. These are the advocates later on who go out and who start, and the others say, oh, he's doing it, might be good, I follow him.
この度はおめでとうございました。また本当にありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Okay, good luck. Yeah, thank you.
Please smile. Smile.